Hi, and welcome to the Megan Waldrop podcast. I'm Megan. I'm so happy to have you here. If you're new, pull up a chair. If you've been here forever, you know I love that we get to have this time together, and I never take it for granted that you choose to spend time here with our awesome community. We're just here. This is a space where you can ask deep questions and get curious and have these kind of interesting, curious conversations. It's the kind of conversations I like to say that you might have on a back porch late at night with maybe some dear friends or maybe your loved ones, or maybe not. Maybe sometimes you can't have these conversations with them. But, sometimes our conversations are spiritual, sometimes they're existential, and sometimes they're just simply about what it means to be a human. There's no wrong answers here. As always, I say BYOB, bring your own beliefs. We're all about expansion and growth and whatever that means to you in the moment. So if you have one belief yesterday and then today it's a little different, it's all good. That's what it's all about. It's always about trying out new things and see what works for us to really live the most joy-filled life we can. And I don't just mean that on the outside, I mean on the inside of our bodies. Like, how do we feel that joy? Because that can feel like a lot of pressure these days. It can feel foreign. Like, how the hell do I even do that? I've been operating on a frequency or a vibration that has felt like I've been struggling, and I feel clenched and stressed a lot. And I don't know how to get there. Believe me, I'm walking on this journey with you all the time. And so that's why I wanted to talk today about loving yourself. And I say that mockingly because sometimes it can feel like roll my friggin' eyes when people are like, you just have to love yourself. And that's why I'm calling this episode the Love Yourself Test, and actually how to actually feel love for yourself, because this is something that I really struggled with for years, and I still catch myself at times to make sure that, oh, wait, am I doing something that feels loving to myself? So I'm just going to ask it straight up. Like, do you actually feel love for yourself? When someone tells you to love yourself, it's like, do you actually know what that's supposed to feel like? Because sometimes, like I said, it's like we're so used to being critical. That inner critic is in our heads all the time. And so the fact of that whole love yourself thing can feel really abstract, abstract. And what I've found and have practiced, and I've read a bunch of things about this, and one of the things that really worked for me, and I wanted to pass this along to you, is that when it can feel difficult to love yourself, it's really helpful to think of somebody or something that you already feel love for, and use that experience of the however that love feels in your body to use that as like a doorway into experiencing that same sensation towards yourself. So it's not that you have to create this feeling out of thin air of, oh, now I have to love myself after I've been really hard on myself for decades or years or whatever that is. It's just remembering what that feels like. So it's, when people say, do you love yourself? I remember when people would say that and they're like, okay, so do these affirmations and you can say, I love myself, I am worthy, I accept myself. But sometimes our body doesn't believe that when we say these affirmations. They can just be words. And for some people, the affirmations really work and that's great. But for me, I struggled with that for a long time because I needed to have a visceral understanding of what that is. Visceral meaning I needed to feel the sensations of what that is to even remember how to bring that in. So, personal story about the self-love journey. I remember I was living in Charleston, South Carolina, where I am right now. I don't live here full time, but I come here from time to time, and you'll see my background of the podcast if you're on YouTube change. And if it looks like this, that means I'm in Charleston. So, back in my late 20s. I moved there in my mid 20s, and it was in my late 20s. I was well on my way to my alcoholism spiral of life, like just hangovers every day, drinking every day. I mean, Charleston is like, if you're in the scene, in a certain scene, it is like Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Like there's always something going on, especially if you live in the South. Like, who doesn't love to day drink and cocktail parties? And, that's kind of the culture here, is that Southern way of life. So I remember when I was in my 20s, I was living in this really beautiful, cool old house downtown Charleston. And I was hungover as hell. And I think it was just like maybe it was a Sunday. I don't even know what day of the week it was. But I remember I was sitting on my porch, like nursing a hangover. Maybe I had a drink in hand trying to nurse the hangover. And I remember seeing people jogging. And I had this feeling of, well, judgment and then confusion and just like, who do these people think they are? Like, why are they exercising? Like, who cares? Like, why take care of yourself? Like, I remember thinking, why would I even take care of myself? Like, who cares? I was on almost like a live fast type of situation, not live fast, die young baby. I don't know if I had that trajectory, but I was definitely in the I don't give a F era. And I was in that depression era and was in, major full on addiction that I wasn't trying to confront with myself. But it was just that it was so foreign to me to even eat right or sleep well or exercise. Like that didn't even I was like, that's not who I am. I'm not even going to do that. Like, why would anybody do that? Like, what are you trying to prove to yourself type of thing? And it makes me sad. And I have love for that girl who thought that back in the day because I just was in a space where I just couldn't even see that. My self-worth was so low that I couldn't even understand how other people could have it. And it was a time when I knew I should love myself, but I couldn't quite access that feeling. And so for me to access that feeling, I would drink, or I would smoke weed or whatever. And that was my way of accessing this alternate uh, universe or just, what do you call it? Under the influence of thinking that everything was great because drugs and alcohol have a great way of smoothing the edges, but it's just all an illusion, really. So that's how I reached that point of feeling like, oh, everything's great was when I was under the influence and I could calm my inner critic. But thank God I was able to get out of that. And I've talked about my sobriety journey before. And it, I still can't believe that I thought that once about myself, but I also can't believe that I got to where I am right now. And you can too if you're ever struggling. I just want to throw that out there always. So this is where the self-love that comes in. Okay, so this is the practice. Think of someone or something you genuinely love, like have unconditional love for. And I know sometimes family members can be tricky because they can activate triggers. That's why we have certain family members, I feel like, to do that or help us create boundaries or even to create acceptance of certain parts of ourselves that need to be worked on, which we'll talk about in the next episode. So what I like to do is I like to picture my nephews. I have Mackie and Archie, and then I have Waylon out in Washington, and then we have our niece Winnie, who's just precious angels, all of them. So I picture my nephews, I picture my niece, and then I picture my little kitty, Boo-Ray. So sweet. And I just think about how much I love them and just how it feels to love someone like that, just and to love them for all their faults and to their whatever they're doing. Like they're not perfect. They're a wonderful people in my life who I love dearly, or kitty in my life that I love dearly. And it's funny because it's like, wow, we have so much grace over different people and how we can love them and we accept them for who we are, but yet we can be so hard on ourselves. And it sucks. It's like we want this perfection for ourselves, but that's not even something that is achievable. So how do we do this? We picture our loved one or something that we love. Maybe it's an object, maybe it's a place, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's a sweater, maybe it's something that makes you feel cozy. So just visualize who you love, what it is that you love, and just notice in your body. Like ask yourself, where do I feel that love? Where does that love feel? Do I feel it in my chest? Does my chest soften? Does my face change? Do I smile? Do I feel warm? Do I breathe differently? Or does my body feel expansive? And just stay with that sensation. Feel like, okay, this is where I feel it. For me, I always feel it in my chest and in my neck area because that's where I feel the tension. When I feel clenched, it's always in my neck and chest, but it could be anywhere. It could be in your fingers, your toes, your hair, wherever it is. Now just imagine turning that same feeling towards yourself. It's not, what do I love about myself? Instead, it's saying, can I be the recipient of this love? And the thing is that the weird part is that it can feel uncomfortable because we might not be used to it. Or we might have the inner critic saying, this is stupid. This is dumb. Why am I even doing this? This is some hokey woo woo, whatever you want to say. But then you have to realize, like, oh, wait, that's the feeling that's keeping me stuck. So I need to acknowledge that and just see that and be like, no, you know what? I do feel resistance, but, and you might even think, I don't feel that way about myself. And you may feel sadness, you might feel grief or embarrassment, or you might feel nothing, and that's okay too. And it's the practice about turning this love back to yourself isn't forcing yourself to feel love. It's about building familiarity with receiving love to yourself. Like how to just practice the familiarity of receiving that love. So it's funny because whenever I feel this, like when I start getting really hard on myself and I put this into practice and I think about my loved ones and I turn it back on myself. And what I notice about in my body is, like I said, I my chest and my throat eases. I feel warmth, it feels lighter, I feel happier when I'm just sitting in that feeling and I'm not trying to tell myself, well, why do you feel this way? Like you didn't do X, Y, and Z yesterday. So why would you have this kind of self-love? This kind of, that inner critic comes on. But for a moment, it interrupts the pattern of the critic. It kind of, sometimes that inner critic can just keep rolling. It feels like a rolling stone just rolling down the hill with nothing to stop it. It's just like so much energy going and going and going. It's just on this loop, on this loop. But even if you give yourself a moment to feel that within yourself, it interrupts the pattern and it interrupts that fast flow. And for a moment, you're like, oh, it feels nice. I feel expansive. And then it might go away, and that's okay. You could just try it again and keep interrupting that pattern to where you kind of feel like, oh, my body feels like it's melting like warm butter. I feel ease. I feel stillness. I feel calm. And that's what it's all about. It's all about just interrupting that pattern. It's about making yourself more familiar to receive the love that you so freely give to others. So let's try it again. All right, let's try it again. We'll end it with a short little practice again. So think of someone, something, some place that you love. And let that person, place, or thing come to mind and notice what happens in your body. Where does the love live? When you're thinking of that person, that place, or that thing, where do you notice it in your body? Now imagine taking that feeling and gently turning it towards yourself. You don't have to believe anything. You don't have to force anything. Just notice it. And if you feel resistance, that's okay because that means that it's working. You're trying something new. And self-love isn't necessarily a thought you convince yourself to believe. It's more of a relationship that you practice. So sometimes the easiest way to learn what self-love feels like is to notice the love that you already know and share so freely. And just to close, I want to ask you a question that makes me tear up too when I even think about it. It's as simple as, what would happen if you treated yourself like someone you already know how to love? And whatever feelings come up, They're valid. It's okay. If it's any kind of negative thoughts that come up, they do not define you. This is just a practice. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. And the best thing about this, friends, is that we have the whole rest of our lives to continue to practice this love towards ourselves, to practice what it feels like to turn those feelings of warmth and coziness and forgiveness and acceptance for all the faults, just like we do our sweet loved ones. So right now, I'm picturing the little girl, like Megan, at about 7 years old. And that's also a really emotional thought. 7-year-old me, the teenager me who was still trying to figure out who I was, the 20-year-old me who was continuing to figure out who I was, uh, going through life challenges and figuring out ways to deal with them. And it's like, you just picture these different versions of yourself, and what would you want to tell that person? What would you tell your 7-year-old self, your child self? How would you love that person? Because that person is still you. And truly, it is a beautiful thought. If the inner critic comes up, just be like, I notice you, but you do not define me. I'm here to practice my self-love. So let me get back on my train. Let me get back to where I was. Let me interrupt those thought patterns. And, it's not about getting to a state where you're blissed out all day and then nothing ever bothers you, because that's not the human experience. There's always going to be something, but it's the ability to remember that feeling and to be able to return to it again and again and again. And know that you're not alone on this journey. I'm here with you. Everyone else is here with you, doing the same thing, doing our best. And isn't that a wonderful thought to know that, not everyone has it figured out. If anything, we all have these funny stories that we can share about how challenging this can be, or man, I had a breakthrough and this feels great. But know always that you're not alone. And you have the rest of your beautiful, one and precious life to continue to practice this. Because if we don't practice, then what's the trade-off? Like, why not? Why not interrupt these patterns? Why not give ourselves a moment to just be like, oh, driving in the car, try it, whatever that is. There's no wrong way to do this. That was beautiful. That got more emotional than I thought. Clearly still on my journey every single day. I think the forgiveness part is a huge one for me. Just not being the prisoner of the past, and carrying that into the future. And maybe that's another episode. But thank you so much for being here. I truly, truly appreciate your time always. If you like this podcast, or on YouTube, I'd love to hear from you. If you would leave a review or let me know what you like about it, you could email me also at support@meganwaldrop.com. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for being here, and look forward to hanging out with you next time.